Hi guys! So, I'm lighting a candle for us. I've got tea, green tea by my side, so I'm ready for us to talk. As promised, I am going to take you through a step-by-step guide of renting in Singapore. By the way, this candle is made by my friend MJ. It's so nice. It's got flower petals inside. She makes custom candles with like jars that you already have, which is such an amazing sustainable option because then we're not creating more waste. You can bring your pasta sauce jar or old candle jars or I don't know, tins. This one is J'adore, based on the perfume by Dior. Let's get started. This video might be very long, which is why I am prepared because there's a lot of things for us to talk about. I'm going to be looking at the screen a lot today because I've already made notes of everything so that I can stay focused. So we are going to jump straight into it. First, disclaimer, I am not a professional. I'm not an agent, not a landlord. The only experience that I have is that I am a tenant myself. And I've been staying on my own for the past few years in rentals. And I also have a lot of friends actually who are renting. So I'm living vicariously through others. And on top of that, I've also done a lot of research in the past because I'm also renting. My intention of making this video is to help out anyone who is basically new to this. Let's take it step by step because I'm going in chronological order so that you can plan along with me. And use this video as a guide for your entire journey. Assuming now that you have time and that you have an idea that you want to move out but maybe you're not entirely sure when, I would say 2 months is a very comfortable amount of time to have. 1 month is quite little because you have to cram a lot of work viewing places and maybe talking to people if you're also looking for housemates in a short span of time on top of what I assume you normally do day to day. Anything more than 3 months I think is difficult because most places that are listed are for 2 months, 1 month or immediate move-in. Let's go step by step. Phase 1 is how much money do you have? I'm assuming that when you're at this stage and you've decided that you're going to move, that you already have either consistent income or you're in a position where you can consistently predict your income. Based on this amount, the general rule or guide that people usually have is that you shouldn't be paying more than 30 or 40% of your income to rent. But obviously people are in different situations and rent in Singapore is quite expensive. So you know your finances best. If you're willing to pay a little bit more, maybe for something short term as an emergency situation, you adjust it along the way, but that's kind of the amount that we're going for. Next step is to check how much you already have. So you're not only planning for your monthly rent, but there are also upfront costs that you have to pay even before you move in, and these things can add up. So I'm going to break it down for you now. So most landlords, before you even secure the place, will ask for something called a good faith deposit. This amount of money basically is a way for the landlord to know that you are very serious about this place and that you're not just making an offer for the fun of it. This good faith deposit usually turns into the security deposit once you move in or once the tenancy agreement is confirmed. Usually this amount is 1 month rent. So let's say just for this situation, we're assuming that the rent is $1,000, okay? And the deposit, which is another $1,000. That adds up to $2,000 now. The next thing that you for sure need to pay is something called stamp duty. I don't exactly know what stamp duty is, to be honest. I probably should have checked before making this video, but the calculation is as follows. 0.4% out of your lease term's total rent. So for example, you sign a lease for a year, 12 months. That's 12 times 1,000, $12,000 total. 0.4% of that $12,000 is $48. So you have to pay $48 for that, which brings our total now to $2,048. And actually, IRS has their own stamp duty calculator on their website. which makes it really easy to just key in your total rent. Now I'm trying a bit of an odd number. Then you just include your start date and your end date of your lease. Again, I'm trying this out with a bit of a strange lease term. And then you just hit calculate. Easy. Then for sure you're gonna have to move. This depends on how much stuff that you have. Try to think about how many boxes you have. You have a gauge of the size of box that you're going for, what furniture pieces that you have, and once you have all of that, then you'll know whether you need a van or a lorry, what's the size of the lorry, and then you can find the appropriate rental costs for your respective vehicle. I've used GoGoVan twice now to move, and I think it's a really good experience. The first time I did it, I didn't hire any movers, and I got a bunch of friends, a lot of friends actually, to help me move. So I didn't have to pay for the movers, but I did pay for their dinner, and I treated everyone to pizza. The second time I moved, I hired 3 movers with me. So it was me plus 3 other guys. And that ended up costing more, obviously, because you're also paying for manpower. On top of that, when I moved in here, my block had stairs connecting my house to the lift. So even though there were lifts, there was a lot of stairs, so I had to pay extra money because it was considered a walk-up. If you're moving to a walk-up, you have to pay extra because these guys aren't just using trolleys to move the things around, but they are carrying the actual boxes up and down. I think a reasonable amount is maybe $150. This would cover a simple van plus maybe a mover or two to help you out. So those are the must-haves. Everything else that I'm going to explain from here on are optional things depending on your place and your landlord. Some places will already be cleaned professionally, either by the previous tenant who has to do it before they move out, or the landlord themselves to prepare for someone new. But this is to their own discretion. You can try to ask for receipts and stuff, but there is no real way for you to know that they really thoroughly clean the place. So for your own peace of mind, sometimes you might want to consider hiring your own cleaning service, which is what I did, especially if the place is quite old, because then you have a lot of like fixtures that or corners of the house that maybe has not been cleaned in a while. When I moved into this apartment, which is a 3-room HDB, I paid around $300, if I'm not wrong, for the professional cleaning service. So I think $300 is a reasonable price. If you only have a room, I think you can clean it by yourself. But if you are moving into a whole apartment, you might want to consider getting a cleaning service, especially for the bathroom, the toilets, the kitchen. Okay, broadband and Wi-Fi. Not every place will provide Wi-Fi. So in the 2 places that I've lived in, we've had to install our own Wi-Fi service. If I'm not wrong, it cost about $100. Of course, it also depends on the service you're going for, which brand, which plan, which man. Dr. Seuss in the house. And then the last one, second last one, is furniture. Buying new things for your new home. This one depends entirely on how furnished your place is. Usually they go by fully furnished, partially furnished, or unfurnished. So the range could go anywhere between $0 if it's fully furnished to $1,000, $2,000. Of course, it depends on your budget, your taste. If you like nicer furniture, you're gonna end up spending more. If you're okay with buying like the cheapest option from IKEA or buying secondhand from Carousel, then you won't end up paying too much. If you're already on a tight budget at this point, you might want to consider looking for a place that's either fully furnished or partially furnished so that you don't have to end up buying new furniture. And the last thing, which is not exactly money that you have to spend, but I think it's something that I should share with you, is you're going to need time to settle in and move. If you've never moved before, it's extremely tiring. Packing, transporting, unpacking, it takes so much time. And if you work a job where time equals money, then you have to factor in for some lost time, which means lost money. So now we have a budget breakdown. Based on our estimation, we are currently at $3,098. Now, next thing, which is related to moving, Phase 2, you have to do a check-in of what's moving with you. I mentioned earlier, let me recap again. Consider how many boxes of things that you have and consider what you can get rid of. I suggest that you declutter even before you move. So there's a lot of things that you don't need to bring along with you. It's completely unnecessary. Try to get rid of it. So that's just things. A second thing may not affect everyone. If you don't have pets and you don't intend on getting pets when you're in your new place, you can skip to this timestamp that I put maybe here or here, somewhere at the bottom. But if you do have pets, then good luck. I have a cat and I've brought my cat everywhere I've gone. I've had this cat since 2010. Whether or not you can bring pets with you is dependent on your accommodation that you're looking for. Common room, forget it. Whole apartment, maybe. Studio apartments, possibly. Co-living spaces, some of them. Most listings won't say whether or not they are pet friendly, but a few of them will explicitly say pet friendly. The best thing that you can do is ask the moment you make contact with a possible place, do you allow pets? The worst that they can do is say no. Unfortunately, there's no real way of telling from the get-go whether a place is pet friendly unless they state in the description of the listing. In my experience, in one place, I did the very naughty thing of not telling the landlord that I had a cat, so we just kind of kept it a secret. I don't recommend it because if you get caught, you might lose your deposit. I was lucky and I was safe, but I don't recommend it. The second place that I moved into, I asked the landlord if she was okay that I had a cat, and she was completely fine with it. So I got really lucky then. All this is dependent on landlord preference. I feel like the best thing that you can do is move into a whole apartment with like 2 bedrooms, 3 or 4 bedrooms, and you flat share the place with other housemates. Find other housemates that are okay with your pet, live with them. Now we're moving on to phase 3, which is 2 things at the same time. Deciding on a place and who you're going to live with. I'm going to list down options for the who first, okay? So of course you can live alone. Options are studio apartments or 1-room apartments. These are expensive. You may feel lonely because you live on your own, but I feel, and don't take my word on this because I don't have any research to back this up, this is all just based on my experience looking for a place for me and my cat, that I feel like you might get a higher chance of finding places that are pet friendly. Option 2 is to live with other people. You could either live with a landlord, so you rent a common room, or a master bedroom which comes with an ensuite bathroom. But when you live with a landlord, the likelihood of you getting limitations on visitors and cooking is quite high. So they may have strict rules that you can't cook, or you can only do light cooking, whatever that means, and that you can't have visitors, or you can only have visitors in specific hours, or you can't have overnight visitors, things like that. It's also the least amount of privacy, I feel, just because you're living with the people who are renting you the place. You could live with other tenants. You could flat share with other housemates who are looking for a similar place as you, similar budget as you. There are some options for how to find these people. You could go on Instagram and see if any of your friends or anyone in your circle wants to rent out a place. You could find people online. There is a website called roomies.sg, which basically is a website for you to link up with other people who are looking for flatmates as well. Once you've linked up and you decide that, hey, we want the same things, our budget's aligned, let's look for a place together, then you can move on to the next step. You could also live with your friends, but this is a word of warning. Just because you're friends doesn't mean they'll be nice to live with. Just because you're friends doesn't mean that your living environment aligns. Maybe you have different noise levels. Maybe you have different habits in your home. Maybe you don't clean the same way, etc., etc. So if you do decide to move with your friends, be absolutely completely honest about what you want in a living environment, and it is okay to say no to living with your friends even though they are your friends. It doesn't mean that they stop being your friends. Hopefully your friendship is mature enough to be able to sustain you saying, maybe it's best we don't live together. That being said, I have lived with friends and it was a wonderful experience. And I think our friendship did not take a hit from living with each other. Or at least I don't think so. I hope not, but I don't think so. But I have seen other friends who lived with their friends and their friendship ended up taking a hit because of that. In the event that you've decided to flat share with a bunch of strangers, it's important that you know what you are looking for before you even look for your flatmates. So have a think about what kind of living environment that you like, what kind of place that you like. All of that you have to decide before you talk to your flatmates so that you already have something to work with and you're not just compromising what you like and what you want for something someone else might want. We'll go through how to make the list of needs and wants in a bit so that you have something to start with. Of course, be kind, be reasonable. There are some things you can be flexible with, some things you have to stay firm. Now you can move on to the exciting part, which is finding the place itself. There are a few different housing situations that we have in Singapore. First one is HDB apartments. So if you're local, you're already familiar with what HDB is, but if you're not, HDB is basically the public housing system. These public houses are all over Singapore and they are generally the most affordable option. So if you are on a bit of a tight budget, you might want to go for HDB and not the other options. And then you have condominiums. These are private apartments and they're usually a gated community. So you will have a security guard who's working 24/7, ensuring that there aren't any like strangers or random people just going into the condo complex. Condos also have other facilities like pools, gyms, function rooms that you can book. And I've seen some condos have some fancier condos have things like a golf room, a reading room. So if you're interested in having a place that kind of has it all, some place that you want to make full use of, you can consider condos. Of course, all those extra facilities add on to the cost and you have to pay a bit of a premium. If you have a little bit more money and you want somewhere that's bigger or nicer, you could consider a landed house, like a semi-detached house or a bungalow. These ones are of course more expensive, but they are also bigger. I've seen landed houses that have like 6 bedrooms, 7 bedrooms, which means that you end up sharing with more people. Of course, per person, it's still going to be quite expensive. And I find that most landed houses are actually less convenient because they are further away from bus stops or MRT stations. So if you don't drive, it may be a little bit inconvenient. And co-living spaces, there are quite a few. I have 4 here, but I recently got a lot of ads for new co-living spaces. The 4 that I have here is Cove, Weave, Figment, and Dash. I think these are the pretty popular ones. And I mean, based on the photos that they post, they look very beautiful. A little side note, let's talk about safety. I know that in some cities, safety is a bigger concern. So there are some neighborhoods that are maybe more safe and some neighborhoods that are less safe. In Singapore, all neighborhoods are pretty much quite safe. Crime rate here is really low and you don't really get situations so much where, there's crime involving like house break-ins and stuff. I think that's quite rare and it's not specific to neighborhoods. Those are usually outliers and can happen pretty much anywhere. Of course, practice precaution, lock your doors, make sure your windows are locked as well. And if your house comes with a gate and a door, lock both. There are some neighborhoods that have a bit of a reputation. For example, Yishun has a bad reputation in Singapore, but I would say that it's not to the extent where you should avoid living there. There are plenty of locals that live there and have no issues living in Yishun. It's just that there have been news reports of certain strange happenings in Yishun, and because of that, the place has turned a bit into a meme, a bit into a joke. But in Singapore, it's still safe. So you have nothing to worry about. Now you have an idea of who you're living with and also the kind of housing that you are interested in. Let's discuss making a list for your non-negotiables. I love this term. I use it for everything. I use it for friendships, relationships, for work. everything, non-negotiables. Always know what you will definitely stay firm on and know what you can be flexible in. I've broken down this list into 2 parts: location and apartment. Make a list of things that you really want your house to have or your neighborhood to have, and then rank them based on 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. 3 star means that you must have this, and this will be a defining factor of whether or not you decide to move in. 2 stars is you would really love to have it. 1 star means it will be nice, but you don't necessarily need it, and it's something that you can stay flexible in. So you've got your list, you know what you want, now you're going to go viewing. Viewing is very exciting because you can actually see and experience the place. Please go and see the place. Do not just do like a virtual tour and see pictures and then say yes to a place. No. There are so many listings, so many places that I've been to, but the photos just feel different from the actual place. Most of these photos have their brightness turned up, contrast turned up, so it looks really fresh and light and bright. But when you reach the place, it may not actually be that way. You have to go look at the place. I also say look at the place because you have to test out the things in the house. Do not be shy. Touch things. Touch the walls. How hard is it? Is it like, that's quite hard. This is a hard wall. How thick are the walls? Do the taps work? Is the flush working okay? Does the stove look like it's working well? Do not move into a place where things seem like they're kind of falling apart. Unless it's a very good deal and you're willing to live with it. Of course, there is always an if. You don't want to move into a place that will give you additional problems in the future. You want to move into a place where you can already settle in. You just need to bring your stuff in and you're comfortable. I recommend going to a place more than once. Let's say the first time you go in the day. Okay, you get a sense of what it's like in the day, of how much light there is, what's the noise level like when, everyone is at work. But maybe it's noisy at night. So try to see if you can go to the place more than once. But I also understand that places get swiped up really fast. And so listen to your gut about this. If there's a place that you're like, oh my god, I absolutely love it, this is the best place I found so far, you may not have the luxury of a second viewing before the place gets taken up. I also recommend commuting to and from work to this potential place. Especially if you work a full-time job, this is something you're going to do every single day. You don't want to move into a place and then find out that you have to take a bus to the MRT station, and that bus for some reason takes really long and takes like 10 to 15 minutes to arrive, which means that if you miss one, you're going to have to wait really long for the next one, and that your journey and your commute is just going to be a trashy experience. If you have the opportunity, maybe after or before your viewing, if you're going to work, maybe you can try commuting. And just a little word of advice. Don't think that whatever you see on social media is the norm. Most people who display their apartments proudly are the people who are living in places that cost a bomb to live in. Modern studio apartments, newly renovated flats. You don't have to live in those kind of places. Don't think that you have to live a certain way to fulfill some like fantasy of living on your own. You can turn a beaten down old apartment into a home. Trust me, you can. The places that I've lived in are old, somewhat falling apart. Where I'm staying now, when I moved in, it was disgusting. When I came for the viewing, it was 4 college dudes living in a 3-room flat, 2 bedrooms. There was a lot of junk. They were crammed. They were stinky. But I tried to look at the place for what it is, and I was committed into turning the place into a home. And I really do feel like I'm at home. So I am quite sad that I have to move out. But I'm trying not to think too much about it. Even though that's a lie, and all I've been doing is thinking a lot about it in the past week. And I've been panicking. But I feel better about it now. Let's say you found a maybe place, okay? Phase 4, securing the place. So if you really, 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 really like the place, I would suggest, and that you can afford it, I would suggest offering a little bit more to increase your chances of securing the place. I've never done this. I would never offer more. If you find a place and you think, hey, maybe there's some room for negotiation, you can try to negotiate a little bit, maybe 5%, 10%. I think it's a good window. Again, I never negotiate because I'm scared of negotiating. But, if you have the charisma for it, if you have the skills for it, I say always try negotiating, because the worst they can do is say no, and then you pay whatever they were asking for originally. But also try to assess the market. Right now, as of when I'm posting this, it's quite expensive, so I have a feeling there's very little room for negotiation. But if you're maybe watching this from the future where things are a bit better and you have a bit more power as the tenant, go for it. I mentioned the good faith deposit. Some landlords will also ask for something called the letter of intent, LOI. This is a letter that will include all your requests, basically. So you will state that, okay, I would like to rent the space for this amount of money, and I will pay the deposit for this, and I would like to request for this. Some things that you may want to consider adding to your letter of intent, or if they don't need a letter, you can discuss with your landlord. 1. Requests about furniture, cleaning, appliances. Let's say you're moving into a place and the washing machine looks a little bit old, unreliable. You can try and request for a new washing machine. You could also request a professional cleaning service. So if they don't already have that, and just for your peace of mind, you want the whole place cleaned, you can request. You could also clarify your warranty period. Sometimes they will give maybe a month or 2, and in that window of time, when you just move in, any damages, issues with the flat will be settled by the landlord exclusively. The minor repair clause is something that you can add in for the subsequent months. So maybe after your warranty period is over, you can have an agreement with your landlord about how much each party should pay should there be any damages. This will kind of protect both parties, especially you. This one is especially valuable if maybe you're a foreigner and there's a possibility of you needing to leave the country because of past issues or visa or whatever. There is a thing called diplomatic cause that allows you to terminate your rental contract before it ends without incurring any fines or having your deposit taken away from you. I also recommend, and this is something I had for my previous apartment because they were more strict on that, even if they don't provide for you, you should also have an inventory checklist on your own. This is basically a checklist of all the items that come with the apartment and the condition that it's in, the various parts and quantities. So for example, if you get a set of keys, you put maybe 3 sets. I recommend that you also take photos of the things that are in the checklist, various angles and all, and keep that just in case anything goes wrong. You could also do this for things like floors, walls, doors, any part of the house. If you spot that there is a bit of a defect, scratches, a chip in the wall, anything, take a picture of it before you move in or at the beginning of your lease. In the event that you are moving out and the landlord does a check of the house and they spot like, hey, there's a problem with the wall, or hey, there is a chip on the floor, you already have proof that that was not caused by you and it was already like that because of a previous tenant or whatever. The landlord kind of has the final say on how much of the deposit they give back to you. So if they find that you broke something, essentially you lose money. This is of course worst case scenario. I don't know, most landlords I think are not such a tyrant, but there will always be a few. The last thing that you might want to discuss with your landlord is lease renewal. So talk about how much heads up you have to give the landlord if you want to renew the lease or if you want to terminate the lease. Some places will require you to give a heads up of like 2 months, 1 month, all this depending on the landlord. If you have completed phase 4, it means that you have secured your future home. So congratulations, and it's a very exciting journey ahead. So many things that you can do in your new apartment, and always remember, home is what you make of it. It's not about having the latest furniture or the nicest decor. It's about how you can make it your own. I wanted to bring up that just because it's so easy for us to get hung up on that ideal life and ideal world. We see so much of a certain type of home or an apartment, especially if you're always on social media and you've gone down the rabbit hole of apartment hunting on YouTube and all of that. Most of these places are showing you the best places. I mean, not best, but pretty good places. It doesn't mean that you have to live like that. You don't have to sacrifice your money, your hard-earned money, just to live up to some standard. So all the best on your apartment hunting, house hunting journey. If there's anything that I missed out, please feel free to tell me. You can comment or you can DM me. I will be more than happy to answer questions or share my experience on more specific situations. So I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much for watching. I suspect that this is a long video, so if you made it all the way, good job, congrats. Have a drink to that. Have some tea. No, I'm done. Okay, bye bye.